Let me ask you something. If your star student shows up with straight A's always, and then suddenly forgets how to read, do you blame the textbooks or ask what's going wrong with the system? Because that is Shenzhen, China's so-called miracle city, the sandbox of reform, the poster child of Chinese tech, now coughing, stumbling, and running on IOUs. Jobs are vanishing, paychecks are shrinking, debt is exploding, and the city's shopping malls are so quiet you can hear the escalators yawn. Stay with me, I'm going to show you how the engine room of China's economic growth stalled, and why this isn't just a blip. It is a blueprint of China's economic collapse. This isn't about just one city having a bad day. Shenzhen is the most dynamic city in China. If Shenzhen is sick, the whole model is terminal. The data screens the same story. Employment down, revenue down, trade down, consumption down, debt up. And the solutions? Slash teachers' pay, sell more bonds, pretend retail is fine because Hong Kong shoppers bought a few handbags. Cute, but not convincing. Let's break down what's actually happening in Shenzhen and what this means for China. First, let's start with the number nobody in China's propaganda department wants to talk about. The number of insured workers. In China, formal employers must enroll you in social medical insurance. It is the cleanest proxy we have for real formal jobs. Shenzhen's insured workforce peaked in 2018. Since then, falling fast. That drop in number isn't seasonal, it's systemic. Companies closing, hiring freezes, mass layoffs. You can fudge GDP, you can season the retail numbers, but you can't hide the fact that fewer workers are insured because fewer workers have real formal jobs. Shenzhen, the job magnet, has turned into a job repellent. That's not a cycle. That is a structural brick wall. I remember the Shenzhen I knew. Job listings exploding. Recruiters texting at midnight. Tech engineers hopping companies like it was like a sport. Today, HR sends dear candidate emails like breakup notes. We will keep your resumes on file. Translation, see you never. The bottom line is, when your best city cannot create jobs, your model is broken. Next up, the city's fiscal reality check. Shenzhen's fiscal revenue fell 12% in 2024, the worst among top-tier cities. Why? Land sales imploded, down nearly 46%. That is the magic trick local government used for 20 years. Sell land, pocket cash, and call it development. The trick doesn't work when nobody wants the land and your developers are going broke. Tax intake also shrank because business activity shrank. You can't tax ghost invoices and empty factories. And crucially, because of the tax reforms, local governments don't have much flexibility to manipulate reported revenue figures. What comes in is what gets recorded. Chinese cities cannot easily adjust or fudge the numbers on local revenues, collected by the central government. If local government's fiscal revenue is down double digits, economic activity is down, period. That is the scoreboard, not the spin. And the takeaway is clear. When revenue fall this hard in Shenzhen, the revenue star, weaker cities in China are already on the floor. So what do you do when your income collapses, but your bills don't? You borrow. A little at first, and then a lot. And then you hit your max limit and pretend the card still swipes. Shenzhen's local government debt blew up from roughly 9.4 billion RMB in 2018 to around 140 billion RMB in 2024. That is about a 14 times increase over 6 years. 14 times. That is not counter cyclical stimulus. That is life support. Debt service is starting to eat tomorrow's budget, which kills tomorrow's growth, which forces more debt. Welcome to the hamster wheel. Of course, the solution to this local government debt problem is simple. Just sell more bonds to finance the old bonds you sold last year to pay for the last bonds. What could go wrong? When the richest city in a room needs a fiscal bailout, it is reasonable to predict that the whole room is on the verge of fiscal cliff. And because Shenzhen's government is going broke, austerity arrives. Now, even teachers take the heat. Shenzhen city government cannot monetize teachers' salaries. So when a squeeze comes, pay cuts come too. And Shenzhen cut teachers' pay by around 30%. Teachers were among the best paid public servants there. Now, why teachers first? Because they're less politically protected than core bureaucrats and big state projects. This is the quiet tale of fiscal distress. You don't cancel the flashy bridge. You cut the human beings who keep society stable. Great long-term plan. Demoralize the people who educate your kids. That will fix it. Now, let's look at the trade downshift, because cargo doesn't lie either. Ports tell the truth. If stuff moves, your economy hums. If it doesn't, your story doesn't either. And the cargo throughput fell 8.7% in 2024. Shenzhen was supposed to consolidate its role as the Greater Bay Area trade king. Instead, fewer containers, fewer trucks, fewer purchase orders. That is production turning down, exports cooling, and domestic demand sputtering. You can't propaganda a container onto a ship. Now, what about consumption? Shenzhen likes to point to the 45% surge in Hong Kong shoppers crossing the border and says, look, retail is alive. And then you open the number. Retail sales up just 1.4%. Wait, what? If retail only grows 1.4% after a 45% boost from outside shoppers, it means local consumption collapsed. Hong Kong visitors didn't uplift the economy. They just papered over a plunge in Shenzhen residents' spending power. Unemployment and wage cuts do that. People buy fewer sofas when their job just turned into a rumor. You can import tourists from nearby Hong Kong, but you can't import confidence. Now, let's connect the dots. Unemployment contraction, as evidenced by a reduction in insured workers, which shows formal economic stress. Fiscal revenue fall proves real economic contraction. That explosion means the city's borrowing just to stay afloat. Austerity signals insolvency pressure. Trade decline undercuts the world factory narrative. Consumption weakness confirms that households are tapped out. And that is not just a cycle, that is a system. The old model of land finance plus cheap credit plus export machine plus ever rising asset prices is dead. Once land finance collapsed and developers imploded, the fiscal heart stopped pumping. Exports can't save you in a deglobalizing world where China is seen as the biggest supply chain risk. And households won't spend when jobs are shaky and apartments are unfinished or underwater. And remember, this is Shenzhen we're talking about, the best of the best. If your A student is failing, how are the C students doing? I used to land in Shenzhen and just feel the hum, the energy. Battery labs hiring, hardware markets buzzing, founders pitching in Starbucks like auctioneers. Today, that hum is different. It is the hum of air conditioning in half-empty office towers. Shenzhen is a microcosm. If the strongest city is this bad, then the national outlook is obvious. Cities dependent on land sales are fiscally strained. Local government debt is the new shadow banking. And every solution just prints a bigger problem. Household demand is structurally weak because employment is insecure and wealth is trapped in depreciating property. And austerity will quietly spread. Fewer public services, lower pay, slower upgrades, and angrier citizens. Find me the thriving Chinese city that isn't propped up by debt, land auctions, or creative accounting. I'll wait. Now, what comes next? More debt issuance labeled as refinancing or special. More pay cuts and efficiency drives throughout the public sector. Stimulus for consumption, yes, vouchers, coupons, while the loot issues like jobs, property losses go untouched. The local Shenzhen press will celebrate a 1.4% retail uptick while ignoring the 45% tourist sugar injection it took from Hong Kong to get there. None of this restarts growth. It just buys time at a higher interest rate. Again, jobs down, revenues down, trade down, consumption down, debt way, way up. That is the diagnosis. And if China's most innovative city can't outrun the model, then the model itself is the problem.